They put Messmer on the cover for a reason. From the moment you enter the Shadowlands, expectations for this boss fight are set. While the Skadoo tree will be the first thing that grabs your attention, your eyes will soon drift to the imposing Shadow Keep overpowering the horizon, and once you make your way to the structure, you begin a lengthy ascent past all manner of danger. The verticality of the dungeon is raising expectations for whatever's waiting for you at the top, because we're climbing to the pinnacle of the world, so whatever's waiting up there must stand at the peak of the world's strength. After the exhaustive dungeon is complete, and you enter the uppermost chamber to confront whatever monstrosity rules over this grueling dungeon, your expectations will not only be met, but exceeded. What sets Messmer apart from every other boss in the FromSoft catalogue is that his introduction isn't meant to intimidate the player through a display of overpowering strength that makes the player tremble with just how ferocious their attacks are going to be, but to intimidate the player through his dialogue and appearance. He's by no means a visually imposing character that towers over the player like Godric or Radahn. He's built like a psychotic madman, someone who comes off completely unhinged and dangerous, with no concept of mercy in his twisted heart. Someone who's dangerous not because of strength, but of savagery. Then the fight commences, and the flow of his attacks is impeccable. The attack strings are long but never overpowering like Millennia's. The flames offer a gorgeous visual garnish to his attacks, giving the fight a cinematic flair which blends beautifully with the dimmed arena. Then you hit that second phase, and the underlying vibe of his psychoticness makes itself apparent when he gouges out his own eye out of frustration. But there's this amazing detail of hesitation as his fingers creep closer, because he still fears the pain he's about to inflict upon himself, despite knowing it's what he has to do. As the camera focuses on his disfigured face, you can still see the rage burning in the voids where his eyes should be. Then that beautiful second phase begins with an over-the-top transformation into a flaming serpent as he plunges down mere seconds after the gameplay has resumed. The rest of his attacks swap to aerial ones as he constantly creates distance between you and closes it in an instant, making the dodge timings infinitely harder to perceive. And like all great FromSoft bosses, when you finally slice off that last inch of their health bar, an intense relief washes over you, with a sad melancholy that you'll have to play the whole game again to experience this fight once more. 2024 was also an amazing year for boss fights against dragons. We had Baal from Shadow of the Erdtree, the Red Dragon from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the various dragons from Dragon's Dogma 2, the Redscale dragon super boss from Metaphor ReFantazio, but for my money, the best boss fight against a dragon this year was the duo boss fight against Seartooth and Icetalon from Dragon Age the Veilguard. Because what's better than one dragon? Two. And what's better than two dragons? Two elemental-themed dragons whose elements contrast each other. I've spoken before about how Veilguard represents the peak of Bioware's combat, and nowhere is that better exemplified than the dragon bosses across the game. These massive creatures with huge AoE attacks fill up the screen with gorgeously explosive colours that Dragon Age has adopted, and nowhere does that shine better than the duo boss fight against Seartooth and Icetalon. I think my favourite part about this boss is how it only starts with Icetalon, which starts the fight off on a high note with a towering beast, but leaves room for it to grow once more when Seartooth joins the fray, easily making for the most cinematic fight of the year. I love that this fight takes place at night, so the deathly glow of these scaled beasts can shine with the fear-inducing intensity that they deserve. The hectic chaos of these two Goliaths bellowing contrasting projectiles across every inch of the battlefield as you dodge roll for your life through the Song of Ice and Fire is pure action perfection, culminating in the climactic moment when all your allies over the course of the game unite to help you take down these majestic creatures, signaling the beginning of the finale as the realm is ready to take the fight to the elven gods. The last boss fight I have the time to mention in this video is one so excellent that the original creator of this boss described it as making him feel awful when meeting his creation again in the remake. I'm referring to the Abstract Daddy boss fight in Silent Hill 2. While I think there were certainly better bosses this year from a gameplay perspective, such as the final bosses of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Black Myth Wukong, and Stellar Blade, in order to make the video more interesting and varied, I've decided to include a boss fight whose quality comes from the story and themes that they represent. Abstract Daddy is a representation of Angela's trauma of being sexually abused by her father. In fact, the boss is literally a depiction of her father defiling her on a bed. Notice how there's a second head underneath the first. The gameplay of this boss fight is frankly mortifying, as it will chase you through the halls that appear as Angela's childhood home, as you desperately try and escape from Daddy chasing after you. This entire fight just made me disgusted and furious, and I can't even comprehend how a real-world victim of such a heinous atrocity could have reacted to such a raw and traumatic sequence. And if you were one of the low-life scum creatures that dared to complain that Angela wasn't hot enough in the remake, I truly don't know how you can sleep at night after witnessing this scene. I'll be back in 2 days. In the meantime, here's a video about how bold the opening of the Silent Hill 2 remake was.